great to be in the SEC. Welcome to the SEC Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Warren. If you love all things Southeastern Conference, the SEC Recap is where you want to be. This is part 2 of our Week 3 recap. Yesterday we covered the SEC East. Today we're going to dive in and cover the SEC West and also look ahead a little bit to Week 4, some game previews, predictions, and that sort of thing. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can support the show by going to anchor.fm/SEC Recap. There's also a link to the Patreon in the show notes. You can also follow along with the companion article I write for all of these podcasts, also listed in the show notes. So without further ado, let's dive right into the huddle and take a look at the SEC West.
Come on, huddle up.
Remember, yesterday I said that I'm dubbing this the weekend of redemptions and oopsies. So we're starting off with an oopsie. Arkansas. Big oopsie. Almost oopsie. The Bobby Petrino Family Bowl. I think they were handing out neck braces to everyone who had a ticket to that game. This almost went really bad for the Hogs. And I think that was primarily thanks to Missouri State's passing game, taking advantage of a weak Arkansas secondary that's given up over 1,000 yards through 3 games. They've given up over 300 air yards in each of their 3 games, compared to just giving up 68 average on the ground. So Hogs have a good offense. They have a good run defense, but any team that can throw can compete with them and possibly beat them through the air. Not super worried about that when they face Texas A&M coming up. Talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. LSU, big redemption. This was my game of the week at Mississippi State in Baton Rouge. I consider this an upset. I think the Bulldogs were favored by most going into this matchup, and late third quarter, early fourth quarter, LSU started making it look very lopsided. Jaden Daniels was way better than Will Rogers. And the Tigers' offense was balanced, 206 on the ground, 210 through the air. It started slow for the Tigers, but they just ran away with it in the fourth quarter. This was a big-time turnaround for Brian Kelly and that squad. And as you look forward to what's ahead on their schedule, you know, they got a cupcake next week, New Mexico, but then they go to Auburn. I'm not sure they're very worried about Auburn. They do have Tennessee coming up the following week. Tennessee's offense has been red hot, but you know, the Tigers found a way to slow down Mississippi State. Different scheme there, but you know, probably some similar things defensively they'll look to lean on versus Tennessee. They go to Florida. Florida's not looking like a top SEC team right now. They do host Ole Miss, followed by Alabama, followed by going to Arkansas. They get Texas A&M last week of the schedule. You know, just off the cuff here looking, I think Auburn's a win. Tennessee coin flip. Florida, I think, is a win. Ole Miss is going to be tough. I'm going to lean Ole Miss. Bama, I lean Bama. Arkansas, maybe closer than we thought beginning of season, but I'm going to lean Arkansas for now. And then Texas A&M, I think they can win the Texas A&M game. So of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 SEC games on the schedule, I think they easily have 1, 2, 3 wins. 3 wins, maybe a coin flip, and a couple losses. So all in all, I think a lot better outlook, a lot more positive outlook for the LSU Tigers after that win versus Mississippi State. On to Alabama. You know, when you're this good, when you're as good as Alabama and Georgia, there's just not a whole lot to say. This was a dominant performance. I don't think anybody would have expected Bryce Young to throw 2 interceptions to UL Monroe. And in fact, Bryce Young is currently ranked 7th among SEC QBs. They seem to be lacking that big-time go-to wide receiver. I think a few SEC teams are looking at Bama this year as a winnable matchup, as opposed to almost that guaranteed loss, kind of how everybody's viewing Georgia now. They go on the road to Tennessee. They do tend to play a little bit worse or maybe even down to their competition when they go on the road. So I think a lot of teams that are hosting Bama might be looking at that as a possible win this year. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart looks to be the guy. The Rebels put together a dominant win over Georgia Tech. Now, this is a bad Georgia Tech team. This is not the triple option Georgia Tech team of the days of old. In fact, I don't know how Jeff Collins is still the coach here. I don't think they've won more than 3 games in a single season through his tenure, going back to 2019. So, despite that performance, I still don't think we're going to learn much about Ole Miss until they play Kentucky in Week 5. Ole Miss has a sneaky good defense. I think that defense is not getting talked about, being as good as they are. So we'll see what happens in that matchup versus Kentucky. I think Ole Miss's offense is going to be way too much even for Kentucky, and I don't think Kentucky has the offense that is going to be able to keep up. Auburn down on the plains. Ugh. This is toilet emoji, toilet emoji, toilet emoji. I'm not convinced Penn State is a really good football team. I think they're okay. I think they have a pretty good defense. I don't think their offense is super high-powered. I just think Auburn is a really bad football team. They definitely have a quarterback problem. Finley and Ashford both threw an interception. They have an overall offense problem. Tank Bigsby, one of the, I think, still top running backs in the SEC, had 9 carries for 39 yards. I mean, hell, they have a Brian Harsin problem, and I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm not calling for a coach's head or anything. I think Brian Harsin knows. I think everybody down there knows. All the fans know. This team struggled through San Jose State last week, and so when you get blown out at home by Penn State, there's a reckoning coming. I think sooner rather than later. Hey, maybe Bobby Petrino will be looking for a job in Auburn soon. Anyway, Mississippi State, disappointing outing for Mississippi State in Baton Rouge, but this offense lives and dies by the pass, and this was Mississippi State's game through the first half. Third quarter, LSU just found a way to slow them down and shut it off in the fourth quarter. This offense has to be better against SEC defenses. As Will Roger goes, so this team goes. I still think Mississippi State's a good team. I still think they're potentially a top 25 team. So positive outlook for the Bulldogs going forward, but I know they really wanted this one down in Baton Rouge. Texas A&M got a little redemption here. You get a top 25 victory over number 13 Miami, but man, I think it's clear to everyone why College Game Day chose Boone, North Carolina over College Station. This is a very subpar offense. And Miami actually outgained Texas A&M 175 to 124 on the ground, 217 to 140 through the air. I think the difference was converting red zone possessions to TDs, which A&M was able to do. They still went scoreless in the second and fourth quarters. Max Johnson wasn't a real difference maker other than he didn't turn the football over. But the defense won this game. Look, I just have a question for Aggies fans. Is Texas A&M football fun to watch for you? I mean, this game is like watching an Iowa game. Sure, the defense is fine and the defense is keeping it close, but I don't think these games would be close if you had any offense to speak of. I mean, this is a bad product. It's not fun to watch. And College Station has an incredible College Game Day atmosphere. And I just feel bad for all the fans that have to sit and watch this trash offense week after week. Just to give you some stats here. In the SEC, Texas A&M ranks last. Dead last in total offense. 941 yards through 3 games. They're averaging 313 yards a game. They have passed for 624 yards through 3 games. That's an average of 208 per game. They've rushed for 317. They're averaging 105 a game on the ground. 62 total points per game, 20.67, which is about 14 under the league average, or the SEC average of 35 and a hook. This is an offense that is 110th overall. They have 157 offensive plays and a total of 48 first downs. That's 16 first downs a game. This offense is just, they're slow. It's not exciting. There's no explosive playmaking. Credit to the defense for keeping them in these games and keeping them close. Let me read you some names here real quick. Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas A&M. Those 4 teams are ranked 119, 120, 121, and 122 in time of possession. Now, I'm going to throw Florida out here, and I'm going to look at Ole Miss and Tennessee because Florida doesn't run the same type of offense that Ole Miss and Tennessee do. The reason I'm bringing this up is because as fast as Ole Miss and Tennessee go, they are always going to lose the time of possession battle. That's kind of an irrelevant metric when you're looking at offensive stats for those two teams. Texas A&M their offense runs at a snail's pace compared to Ole Miss and Tennessee, yet they're ranked right behind them in total time of possession. This is just not good. Defensively, okay, what Texas A&M is kind of hanging their hat on is their defense, right? Well, if you weight overall defense by points, they're the number 10 defense in the country, points allowed. Now that's against Sam Houston State, App State, who they lost to, and Miami. Miami's a 50th ranked defense. They're not a top 20, offense. They're not a top 20 offense. But if you weight overall offense by yards, or overall defense by yards, Texas A&M is 31. They're not even a top 20 defense by yards allowed. You know who is? Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Ole Miss. So Texas A&M's offense is good. They're not so good. They're not a shutdown, shutout defense. They allowed App State to hang around. App State is a 109th ranked defense that held A&M to 14 points. Let's look at some teams on A&M's schedule similar to App State in terms of offense. App State averages about 473 yards a game, and these are SEC teams that have better talent than App State. Coming up, Arkansas, 500 yards a game. Ole Miss, 496 yards a game. Alabama, 480 yards a game. LSU, 439 yards a game. Again, compare that to total yards a game of 313. All of these teams are outgaining Texas A&M by at least 100, some almost 200 yards a game of offense. I don't think their defense can be good enough this season to keep them in games in SEC play against offenses that are going to score points on their defense. Now, I'm not really meaning to dig into Texas A&M here. It's just this is really one of the only teams with a game worth talking about coming up. Well, it's sort of a road game. It's a neutral site game. They play at Jerry World. They got Arkansas coming in. Arkansas is a good offense. They're not a great defense. In fact, I think they have the 50th ranked passing defense. And so if a team is going to beat Arkansas, they're going to do it through passing. But Texas A&M has the 99th ranked overall passing offense. Texas A&M is not going to beat Arkansas by throwing on them. I mean, if there's a narrative here, that's probably it. But they just need more to happen. Max Johnson looked okay. He was more consistent than Haynes King. I'm sure it was a breath of fresh air for a lot of fans watching this game. But I don't think you can look to Max Johnson as a real difference maker. You've got to have something step up in this offense. You need a coordinator who can really make this work. But look, coordinators can only do what head coaches allow them to do. And I don't know if there's an offensive coordinator in the country who Jimbo Fisher would just kind of let loose and say, okay, make this offense great. And I think if you lose A-Chain and Smith for any reason this year, what does Texas A&M have left? I mean, God forbid they get hurt. I'm not saying I want that to happen or I expect that to happen or anything. But those are their two biggest offensive playmakers. And if they get hurt, who's putting up yards? Who's putting up points? I'll hold off on my score prediction. But since this was going to be a shorter episode anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about Texas A&M and what's going on down there in College Station. Now, I gave my power rankings yesterday. I'll go through those on today's episode real quick. If you want to hear my reasoning and my rationale for why I placed all these teams, you can go back and listen to them yesterday, particularly the bottom three, South Carolina, Missouri, and Vanderbilt, that I have 14, 13, and 12 respectively. So go back and give that a listen if you'd like to hear more on why I think those three are rounding out the bottom. But then coming in at 11, I have Auburn. Texas A&M sits at number 10 right now until they prove me otherwise. Number 9, Florida. Number 8, Mississippi State. Number 7, LSU. They moved up thanks to that turnaround win over Mississippi State. A good Mississippi State team. Number 6, Arkansas. Number 5, Kentucky. Number 4, Ole Miss. And 3, 2, and 1, I have Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia. All right. That's going to do it for the huddle. Let's go into our week 4 predictions. We'll look around the conference at the upcoming matchups. Now, there's really only a couple games worth talking about this weekend, but I'll go through them in schedule order, starting with the early games. So we have Kent State at number 1 Georgia. I mean, is there even a betting line for this? This is Georgia in a blowout. Then we have Missouri at Auburn. Now, maybe a better matchup than we would have guessed preseason. I think Auburn should win this one, but should is the operative word. They should win by at least a touchdown, but Missouri's offense starting to get things right with that win this past weekend. If Auburn can't muster any amount of offense to keep up, it could get real ugly in Auburn real fast. Bowling Green going to Mississippi State. Come on. Bulldogs should win this one by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Number 20, Florida at number 11, Tennessee. This is my game of the week. I am not going to cover this one. Stay tuned for my game of the week article and game of the week recap. That'll be out on Thursday or Friday. I'll cover this one from top to bottom. Then we got Tulsa at number 16, Ole Miss. Rebels should handle business here by a couple of touchdowns easy, maybe even another blowout. Northern Illinois, hey, they got beat by Vandy over the weekend. Vandy covered their Vegas win total 2.5 by picking up this third win. They're playing number 8 Kentucky. Vandy beat this Northern Illinois squad on the road, so enough said there. Then I think the only other game worth talking about this weekend is number 10 Arkansas, number 23 Texas A&M. You know, I want to say Arkansas. In fact, I'm going to say Arkansas. But the Petrino Bowl near disaster didn't inspire me. The Hogs should be on upset alert here. But I think they can win this game. What Arkansas didn't get to do was rest their players last week. And that's really what you wanted out of a game like that. You do not want to be playing your starters for 4 quarters in a game versus an FCS team. let alone Missouri State and Bobby Petrino. But they did. They hung on. They got the win. I think Arkansas can turn it around. I think that was a one-off. I think Arkansas is better than A&M. But if they don't watch out, Texas A&M's defense could keep this one close. I think Hogs win this one 28-16. I'm getting 28-16 vibes on this game. Last game here. Sorry, not the last game. The next game, Vanderbilt at number 2 Alabama. Hey, Vandy had that video clip last week, said, hey, we want Bama, we want the SEC. Well, the last time they said that, Alabama rolled into Nashville and beat them like 50-0. So enough with that nonsense. Vandy, you're going to get Bama, and you're going to get the beatdown that comes with it. New Mexico goes to LSU. Nothing cute here. It's LSU all day. And finally, Charlotte at South Carolina. Hey, I ripped into South Carolina yesterday, and I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to upset anybody or upset the fans. Just trying to call it like I see it. But South Carolina has a get-right game here. You get Charlotte at home. You've had a rough couple of weeks in SEC play. Use this to fix some O-line and run game issues, work on that run blocking, get Spencer Rattler some confidence back, get your running game some confidence back. I think you can do it here. That's going to do it for today's show. If you enjoyed this content, please give a follow on Twitter at SEC Recap. Follow me, like, comment, share my articles, share this podcast. Again, if you want to support this podcast, patreon.com/SEC_recap or anchor.fm/SEC recap. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. Be on the lookout for my Game of the Week pod this Thursday or Friday. And it's great to be in the SEC right here on the SEC Recap.